Hi everyone, it's me again, Nicole, and one of the things I'd like to do in week one of this class is tell the story of the chipko movement. Chipko means tree hugger in Hindi. A lot of us have heard of tree huggers before. Let's think about just for a minute what that connotes. I mean, what does it mean when you hear somebody is a tree hugger? Just close your eyes for a minute and think about a tree hugger. You probably wouldn't think of the picture in front of you, probably because I just told you to close your eyes. But open them and then see the picture in front of you. You don't see a hippie or a beatnik or an unclean teenager trying to make a point. You see a woman literally hugging a tree with a man and an axe ready to swing it at her head. See the dead trees around her. What I'm about to tell you is a true story. And it's the start of the tree hugger movement or the chipko movement. Okay, so let's talk about trees for a second. Trees are kind of neat for a reason here. If you give me just a second while I pull up my little marker here. Okay. Nope. All right. All right, so you got the ground and you got a tree. Now here's what people don't realize about trees. Trees have almost twice their mass in roots underneath the ground. Because roots do three things for trees. One, they anchor and stabilize. Two, they store excess water and food. And three, they're the ones that pull all the nutrients from the soil. Roots are very, very, very important to a tree. Here's something that a root does for the environment, not just the tree. Roots have very small little root hairs. And with the roots and the root hairs, they grip the soil. So the soil around here is actually very tight. That doesn't mean anything on flat land. But if you were to say, I don't know, give me a second. So if you were to, I don't know, have a tree maybe on a hillside, that could become very important. So let's imagine you have a mountain or a hill and a valley, and maybe another hill again. And you have a whole bunch of trees up here. Each one of those trees has a root system gripping that dirt. If there's a village down here and you don't have trees over here, the trees over here have been cut down, then their root structures die. And when that happens, nothing's gripping this soil. So if the rain were to come, this soil would wash down and destroy the village with a mudslide. Okay, so knowing all that, let's go back to the chipko movement. Long time ago in India, where there are very mountainous areas and lots of villages in valleys, there lived a peaceful village. And they lived in a valley very similar to this, and around them stood huge teak trees. Teak trees that were as old as the hills themselves. I mean, hundreds of years old, these teak trees. Teak is one of the most expensive woods you can buy. These woods are one of the strongest fibers. They don't have knots. They're very waterproof. They can withstand monsoons. Any really expensive furniture from Asia that you might get might be made of teak wood. It is a very, very expensive tree. And this village was poor, but they were happy in spirit. They lived off the grid. They didn't know they were poor, and they had teak trees surrounding them. Now, because these trees are so strong and so old and can withstand so much, they rarely fell down. In some ancient Hindi cultures, the teak trees are thought to be the homes of ancestors, where your relatives would live because they were so sturdy. So in some areas of Asia, teak forests are considered sacred. They're thought to protect the village. Now, say what you want about the religious implications of that. There is a biological justification for villagers thinking that the tea trees protect them, because if the tea trees are around their village, the root structures are keeping the dirt from mudsliding. This particular village that we're talking about had heard bad stories about another village very similar to theirs who had agreed to let a logging company come in and cut down their teak trees. Now, this village in the next monsoon season was obliterated when a mudslide came sliding down and destroyed their village, killing everybody. Now, again, there's a biological reason for that, but the village that we're talking about thought that they were punished by the ancestors and the gods for disrupting the ancestral home and sacred teak forest. So it wasn't too long before loggers showed up at our village and gave them the same offer, lots of money for their teak trees. Villagers said no. The loggers came back with even more money, and the villagers said no. The loggers then decided to go legal and say that technically the villagers did not own the teak trees, and they could do with them as they pleased, or as the magistrate suggested. The villagers protested, saying that the teak trees were on their land. And the loggers put up quite a convincing argument, to the point that the magistrate, who lived about 100 miles away, decided to get involved and make a decision. So because this was a Hindi village and women were not important enough to make these kinds of decisions, all of the men in the village left to go to the magistrate and argue their case in front of the magistrate and the loggers. What the villagers didn't know is that, Braveheart style, the loggers had their bulldozers waiting just over the next hill. And as soon as all of the men were far enough away, the bulldozers were going to move in and destroy the trees, thinking, what could you do once the trees are knocked down? You'll have to take our money. You can't replant the tree. But they made one mistake. In their plan, they did not factor in the women who stayed at home. And the women saw what the loggers were planning to do. So the women sent the children after the men to bring them back with the magistrate. But in order to stall time, the women who were not very highly regarded in this culture, who were not very highly regarded in this country, wrapped themselves around these trees so that the loggers could not knock them down. The hugging of this tree was called, in Hindi, chipko. Now, I tell this story for many reasons. One, because it's an awesome girl power story, and I do like girl power stories. Two, because it gives a little bit of different perspective to the idea of the tree hugger and where it comes from, and how badly corrupted that image has become, thanks to some of the things that's gone on in this country in the last, 50 years. And three, a question that I always ask my classes is, do we need radicals? Most of us would consider ourselves moderates on most of our beliefs, most of our opinions. We're kind of middle of the road. We have an opinion, we could justify it, but we're not going to get into a fight over it. I don't think anybody in this class could necessarily call yourself a radical. Again, I don't know you, but I'm betting the odds. Know you yet, rather. But I suggest that we do need radicals. And after this video, I'm hoping that you guys engage in a discussion as to whether or not I'm right or wrong. I can't wait to see about that one. But I say we do need the radicals. We do need ecocentrics. We need deep ecologists. We need tree huggers. Because comparatively speaking, we live pretty charmed lives. None of us have any true, really significant problems, not like they do in developing countries where there's no food and no clean water and no security. Most of us live pretty decent lives, comparatively speaking. And because of that, we get complacent. We kind of get soft. We sometimes forget the bigger picture, and we sort of get enveloped in our own little piles of mushy drama. Every once in a while, though, we see a radical, somebody who's willing to wrap themselves around a tree and be bulldozed rather than have the tree fall down. And we say to ourselves, my gosh, what would I wrap myself around to prevent it from being destroyed? What would I die for? What am I that passionate about? I contend we need the radicals because they jar us out of complacency. They make us take a closer look at the world and what we value and why we value it and what we're willing to do for the things that we value. In essence, whether or not we live ethical lives. Do we actually subscribe to the core set of beliefs inside of us in which we base judgment? Do we stay true to those in the decisions that we make? The chipko movement people did. The women in these villages did. What would you do? So that's one of my favorite stories. If all is going to plan tonight, you guys are just about ready to wrap up hour 3. So have that discussion. What would you wrap yourself around? And if you don't agree with me, then let's hear why. Do we need radicals? If not, tell me why not. Why don't we need these people? Why don't we need the tree huggers? That's it. Thanks.